what is a dot sight? Let's have a look at it for a start, and I'll try and explain to you what a dot sight is for and what it does and why it's helpful. So for me, dot sights have a particular use in photography, and that's for shooting birds in flight. So I'm going to try and explain what I mean by that now. So when we're shooting birds in flight, generally we're going to have a big telephoto lens on. You need a big telephoto lens because you want to try and get, you know, the bird as big as you can in the frame most of the time. You want a nice close-up shot. The problem with birds in flight is obviously they're moving. And the problem with telephoto lenses is they've got a very narrow field of view. So once you see a bird, you see a bird flying across in front of you, but by the time you've lifted your camera up to put your eye onto the viewfinder, the potential is that the bird has moved. You've only got a very narrow area to actually lock onto that bird. You know, often it'll have gone left, it'll have gone up, down, back where it came from, and you've just got no chance of seeing it through the viewfinder. Now there are ways around it. Obviously you can try and track in front of the bird, so where you think it's going to go. But for instance, if you're doing things like I did in the summer where I was photographing hobbies, there is no direct path, unlike sort of a goose flying across or a swan where it generally keeps a similar direction, it won't change particularly. With things like hobbies, if they're chasing dragonflies, they can turn on a sixpence and they can be gone in an opposite direction, up, down, left, right. And you just will not be able to lock onto it because the field of view is so narrow, you can only see a very small area. Now what a dot sight does is, and how you set it up, is just as I've got set up here, I've set the big lens up on Eddie the Eagle sat in the tree. And you can set this up on anything. So when you get to a location and you're using a dot sight, just pick something that you can focus the middle point of your autofocus on in your camera and focus on it. Put the dot sight on top of your camera in the hot shoe, lock it on, have it all locked down so it's nice and steady, so you're focused on that thing in the distance. And then basically all you do, inside the dot finder, there'll be a little screen at the back and there'll be a red dot on it. In this instance, with this TTArtisan's one, you can change the brightness and you can also change the colour. You can have a green dot instead of a red dot. But these on the side here, these little wheels, they allow you to adjust where that red dot appears. So what you're basically going to do is you're going to put that red dot in exactly the same point as your autofocus central point is pointing at in the camera. That's the important thing. And then all you're really going to do is when you're lifting your camera up to take that shot, instead of looking through the viewfinder, you look through the dot sight, and that red dot will be on the same point as your central dot inside your camera autofocus. So the advantage of this is that screen that you've got there is much more wide angle. So you've got loads of space up, down, left, right at either side of that dot. Yes, your bird will be smaller, but you just put that red dot on the bird and shoot away, happy in the knowledge that actually through your 600mm lens the bird is massive, but the dot, the central autofocus, is on that bird. And as I say, it has the advantage that as you lift that camera up, if that bird's moved, it doesn't matter with the dot sight because you can see it. You've got a wider field of view, like looking through binoculars that have got a wider field of view, or looking through a wider angled lens on your camera. Yeah, you've got more of the scenery in, but you can see that bird, you can see where it's going, you can see where it's turned. So as you're just following it with that dot and firing away, obviously your camera is shooting at 600mm and you should be autofocus bang on that bird. So it's absolutely excellent for birds in flight. Right, so let's just take a better look at this TTArtisan's Dot Sight in its own right, and we'll take it off the cam for a start so we can show you. Basically, that's it. It fits on your camera by sliding into the hot shoe, and then you've got a lock-in mechanism just there, just to lock it tight onto the camera, because what you don't want is this moving around? Because once you've set it up with your autofocus, you want to keep it there so that when you know that when you're looking through the sight here, you're getting exactly the same point of focus as you are with your autofocus. That's really important. If we look on the back of the sight, initially this is your slide switch here. So when you slide that flips up and gives you your screen that you look through with your dot on. And that operates, it switches it on as well, so the dot is now there. The first two buttons here are brightness buttons, so the left one turns the brightness down, and the right one, the central button, that turns the brightness up. And then the button on the far right, that is just to change the colour from green to red or vice versa. And as stated earlier, these two slide wheels on the side, the left one will move the point of light in the sight left and right, and the right button moves it up and down, basically just so that you can get it level with where your sight is in the autofocus, so you can line them up exactly. And that's really it. As soon as you press that back down, it switches it off. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take this onto the reserve that I've come to today, hopefully get some bird in flight shots and just test how good this is and whether it does give me a big advantage. And then obviously I'll let you know at the end of the day. From my testing so far, it looks really, really good. And for that particular application, birds in flight, I can see it being absolutely fantastic. In fact, I can't wait to use it on hobbies in the summer, because I think a lot of those shots that I missed last year, I probably wouldn't have missed by using one of these. Right, so I'm going to be quick with this a little bit. After using the dot sight for a couple of hours, there are a couple of things that I think are important to note when you're using one of these. The first thing I'd say is that if you're moving about a reserve to certain points and then you're stopping to shoot, is just to check that you haven't knocked it, and just to realign it every time you get to a new position. It's likely that it's going to be fine, but what you don't want to do is get to somewhere and think that everything's set up and then find that actually the dot sight's been knocked. It's fairly sturdy how it's locked on, but always better safe than sorry, I think. So yeah, just check that it's still lined up and then just do a quick alignment. It only takes you a couple of minutes when you get to your next location. Right, another thing that I do with the dot sight is that when I'm setting the dot sight up, I'll set the camera's autofocus to just a single central point, and that's really so that I can get it as accurate as possible. And then once I've done that, I will then revert the camera's autofocus back to what I would normally be using. So in this instance, because I'm doing birds in flight, I'm on quite a wide area of focus points. And also, as well as that, I've got bird eye autofocus on as well. So just trying to cover that so that as soon as the dot sight locks on, the camera will take over, because don't forget the camera is the thing that's taking the images. And yeah, you should have loads of success. Now you might be asking yourself, what is the best way to use one of these dot sights? Well, I like to think of it as a wide-angled viewfinder. So one of the things that I've seen people use it like this, sort of at a distance, and what I like to do is just simply use it as, there's my telephoto viewfinder, this is my wide angle viewfinder, and I have it really close to my eye, just almost touching, if not touching. I don't want to disturb the position, but that just gives me a massive field of view, and that's what I want, rather than trying to hold it out here or something silly. And it's also more stable in this position, and just follow the subject through wherever it goes. But as I say, that's how I found the best way to do it. So yeah, see how you get on with it. As I say, I have seen people doing it like this, but yeah, it just makes more sense. You're more stable, and you can just follow the subject much better, just using it like as I say, a wide-angled viewfinder. Now these are just a few images I took on the day, and to be honest, a lot of these images would be very, very easy to take with your normal autofocus on your camera. I did take all of these images with the use of the dot sight, but there wasn't anything particularly challenging, and I think that's where something like a dot sight comes in. If you get to sort of faster birds like ducks, it does help them because they're really quick across the viewfinder, so you can lose them quite easily. There's a couple of examples there. But where I think this sight will really come in is faster birds that change direction. And this is a bit of film I took a couple of years ago of hobbies, and as you can see I'm trying desperately to keep up. As the bird gets closer though, the autofocus loses sight of the bird, and then I can't see it through the viewfinder at all. So when that happens, I'm having to move from the viewfinder and try and relocate the bird again. With a dot sight that doesn't happen, because you've got such a wide field of view. You can just follow the bird with the dot. It doesn't matter if the autofocus is not seeing the bird, you can just keep that dot on it, and eventually the autofocus will relocate the bird, but it won't relocate it if the bird's gone out of the viewfinder, if it's no longer in that area, which can happen. As I say, if you've got such a small field of view, the bird can be just gone out of the picture, and there's nothing for the autofocus to focus on. The dot sight really does prevent that happening. Right, while I've got a couple of minutes, I hope you found this video useful. For me, I mean, for certain situations, I think it is gonna really be useful. I think for birds in flight, and especially erratic birds in flight or small birds in flight, this just enables you to, it gives you an extra hand up really. It's just another little advantage that you can't get when you're looking through a telephoto lens. So as I say, I hope you find it useful. The other thing I want to say is that TTArtisans at the minute are doing a really good deal on this site. So I've put the link below. With it coming up to Christmas, really it's a great, I mean, it's even, you'd call it a stocking filler, it's that inexpensive, but yeah, for some situations absolutely invaluable. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time for another one.